Master of Divinity at the SDA Theological Seminary at Andrews University, and as a chaplain intern at Ascension St. Vincent Hospital in Indianapolis. Afterwards, he served as a chaplain resident at Moses Cone Memorial Hospital in Greensboro before assuming his current role as the Family Support Coordinator at Honor Bridge. In addition, Cameron is a member of the 230th Brigade Support Battalion of the 30th Brigade Combat Fighting Team of North Carolina National Guard, where he serves as a chaplain. He is the only Black chaplain in this group. Beth Hinesley joins us. She is the Community Relations Coordinator for Honor Bridge. Beth is in charge of providing community education about organ and tissue donation. Beth holds 2 degrees, one in horticulture and one in nursing, combining 2 passions of her life. Beth has worked with Honor Bridge for over 24 years. And Diane Person. Diane is the public relations expert on anatomical donation at Elon University. She advances the institutional interests and acts in the best interest of the donor and their family. Diane has been directly involved in the field of anatomical donation since 1999. She is recognized nationally among willed body program directors for her decades of dedication to the field. Thank you and welcome to each of you. In addition to our panelists, we'd love to know a little bit about you, our participants, and the best way that we can do that is by making use of a polling question. You'll see that come up on your screen. It is multiple choice because we know that many of us serve many different roles. So if you can just take a moment and check all that apply to you, caregiver, patient, advocate, healthcare professional, human service professional, and spiritual care guide. We know that many of you will check many of those boxes, and we appreciate that. This is our way of being able to get to know a little bit about each other as we begin our conversation today. I appreciate you taking a moment, and we will look at the results. So we have a wonderful cross-section. We have a number of healthcare professionals. Nearly half of our group identify themselves as advocates, and what a wonderful role, along with many, many caregivers and some patients and also human service professionals important to our conversation. So thank you for participating in that. As we begin our conversation, I want to invite each one of you to make use of the question and answer area on your Zoom screen. You can submit a question through that Q&A box at any time, and we will try to answer as many of those questions as we can during our time together. I have to say personally, I am very much looking forward to this conversation about legacy, because I am very aware when I think about legacy, I'm sometimes limited to only thinking about a donation being mentioned in an obituary in lieu of flowers, which is wonderful. Or I might think about an endowment being set up with an organization that holds a special place. Again, wonderful way to create legacy. And I know that there's so much more to the topic, and that's what we're going to be able to talk about today. So to get us started, Cameron, in your role as chaplain, legacy, I know, is part of your work and a passion of yours. So if you can talk to us about what does it mean to leave a legacy? And what are some ways that we might consider doing that?
Yes, thank you, Risa. So in my experience as a chaplain, when we talk about legacy, we talk about the stories that are going to be told about you when you're gone. And not just those stories, but who is telling those stories. And so when I'm visiting with families as we are dealing with the end of life of a loved one, I often would ask the family, what stories do you want everyone else to know about your loved one? What are the things that you would tell somebody about this person that they might not know, or some of the things that they do know? And so the families would take that moment, they would take that space, they would take that time to really reflect on who their loved one was and what they want the world to know about them. And that is the legacy, is what are people going to tell others about you when you die. And so some of the ways in which we can create a legacy is by telling the stories that we want to be told about us. And some of those stories could be donations. Some of those stories could also be accomplishments. Some of those stories could be the very family that you leave behind, because it is going to be your loved ones that tell your story. You're not necessarily going to get to tell your story. And more often than not, the people who are left behind won't tell the story how you want it to be told. And so in order to adequately create your legacy, it is important that you let your loved ones know the story and allow them to tell the story as they see it, so that you can live on through that story.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate you setting that tone and getting our conversation started. And Beth, when we think about organ donation, I wonder if you can tell us some about Honor Bridge and your work, and really help us connect that link between organ donation and creating legacy. The impact that a family member of one who has donated an organ does receive, and how that is part of legacy.
Yes, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to come and speak today. My name is Beth Hinsley. My background, as was mentioned, was in nursing, and I had an opportunity to work with a family who lost their 18-year-old daughter, and that was my journey, and that's how I became a community relations coordinator now for Honor Bridge. And we're the organ procurement organization that covers a little over 100 counties in North Carolina. We have one county in Virginia that we work with. We work with hospitals in all of those counties, and we work with families. And as Cameron mentioned, families at their darkest hour, their worst moments that you can only imagine, and that's the loss of a loved one. And as a nurse, when I saw the family that I worked with, when I saw that they knew their daughter, they knew the decision that she had made, and they were able to honor that decision, and they were able to say yes to donation, I knew then that this is where I wanted to end my career with nursing, and that was to get into organ tissue donation, because I saw in the darkest hour how one family, one person who makes a decision about organ donation could save and heal the lives of many. And so with Honor Bridge, the organ procurement organization that I'm with now, my role is a little bit different than nursing. I now do the community education, and I have the opportunity to go out and talk to the communities about the tremendous need for organ, eye, and tissue donation. Oftentimes people don't realize there is a tremendous need, but right now across the United States, there's over 107,000 people waiting for a life-saving organ. But oftentimes people say to me, well, Beth, that's out there. There can't be that many people here in North Carolina who are in need. But unfortunately, just here in North Carolina, there's over 3,000 people who are waiting for a life-saving organ. Kidneys are the #1 needed organ, both here in North Carolina and across the United States. And the one thing when I mention numbers, I kind of see the blank stare across people's face, because they'll say, but Beth, I'm just one person. What difference can I make? And I always tell this one amazing fact, and we talk about legacy. Just one person who registers to be an organ donor could potentially save the lives of over 8 people. that same person who registers to be a tissue donor could heal the lives of over 75 people. And so when you think about your end and how you want to help people, just registering could potentially have an impact on not just one person, but many, many people. And I have met many donor families who have given the gift of life, and they say to me, it was such a tragic moment, but something so positive was able to come out of this because my loved one was able to save or heal the lives of many people. So when we talk about legacy, it just goes hand in hand with organ and tissue donations. So I thank you for this opportunity today to be able to discuss all of these opportunities that everyone has.
No, thank you. I mean, that is such a wonderful explanation and really helps us all have that shared learning and understanding. And so, Diane, when we think about full body donation, I think that some people might be less familiar with it. And yet it is so extraordinarily important. And when we think about legacy and the impact of that donation, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about exactly what does it mean and how that is linked to creating legacy.
Thank you, Risa. And I too would like to thank you for this opportunity to explain anatomical donation and to give thought to ways that anatomical donation may create a legacy. And wonderful to hear from you, Beth and Cameron. So thank you too. Anatomical gift programs like ELON are fundamental in establishing an educational foundation for our future healthcare providers in their need to promote optimal health. Under the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act and the state statutes, it is legal to donate one's body. And donating one's body after death to Elon is an opportunity for North Carolinians, we cover the entire state of North Carolina, to teach, to mentor, and to impact future generations of healthcare providers, healthcare professionals, if you will. And I would say that the gift of what we refer to here at Elon as our silent teacher, it creates a bond. The donor creates a bond with students that they will continue throughout their careers in healthcare, thereby creating an everlasting legacy. So while interacting with students for the planning of our annual donor memorial service, I hear repeatedly from our students what an honor it is to learn from those who have chosen to give their body to serve as their silent teachers. It's a most magnanimous gift toward their experiential learning. And I would add that every single body, each silent teacher, has a unique anatomical lesson to impart. Applications of those lessons substantially enhance the quality of our future healthcare professionals. So in this way, death is not final. And in this way, Elon anatomical donors live on through the lives of their healthcare professionals that they taught the patients that our students will eventually treat. So the study of anatomy and the bond created between students and their silent teachers continues throughout their career. For the duration of their profession, students draw from the experiential learning of human anatomy. And because of one's anatomical gift, our students become better healthcare professionals, treating the whole body. And for this, our students are eternally grateful. So I would like to share a donor's legacy, which is beautifully illustrated in a poem written by an anatomical donor once she decided to donate her body for anatomical study. And I need to read this. I do not have it memorized. And I would not want to make one mistake on this beautiful poem. The author's name is Claire Small, and she was an anatomical gift donor. Claire says, "This is my body. the shell of my being, which is given to you in final offering to the world. I share the elements of life from these old bones, these ligaments, my sinews and my nerves. May that life force that run in me shine forth once more and pass to you the knowledge and the power that sustain the miracle of life. Claire created a legacy in two ways, by virtue of her anatomical gift and in that poem that is on a plaque sitting outside of the anatomy lab where she donated her body.
It's beautiful. I want to encourage participants on our webinar. If you have questions, please submit them. You can see we have our experts for this conversation. And I am thinking about what all three of you said. And, you know, Diane and then Beth, I want to ask a question so that we all have a good understanding. When we think about legacy, of course, the more planning we can do, not during a crisis, the better. So Diane, am I correct that the decision to be an anatomical donor needs to be made by the person during their lifetime?
Yes, Risa, and thank you for that question. That's a great question. And that leads me to one of our distinctives at Elon University's anatomical gift program. We are what is called first person consent program. And that means that the individuals themselves are the ones who make the decision to do the consent work. Sign their name to the consent paperwork. If folks are interested, and one of the things that I do is educate the general public as well as healthcare providers throughout North Carolina. So if folks make the decision, and I like to remind folks, I'm not a recruiter, I am an educator. So if they decide that end of life wish is to become an anatomical donor, they may request a donor registration packet. And this is what they will get in the mail. So another piece that's important is that we encourage our donor registrants to include families in this decision-making process, because families are going to be the ones to help facilitate. So we strongly encourage that, but yes.
So thank you. And Beth, I'll ask you the same question and sort of combine it with a question that came in that says, what is the difference between organ donation and anatomical donation, and how to donate for each?
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. And thank you for asking that, because oftentimes people do get confused with the two. And we have actually talked to families before that they wanted both. But unfortunately, with organ donation, when that happens, there is a critical time frame for us to recover the organs and get them ready for transplant for the recipients who are waiting. Also, the difference in the two is that it's always, with us, it's one of those, we go to the operating room, recover the organs, and then they go to the recipients. And with the whole body donation, and Diana, you can help me with this one as well, the body needs to be intact to do the other part of it with the whole body donation. And so sometimes that confuses it. People have asked me before, so which one do I do? Which one do I register for? And I always say register for both, because we never know what will happen to us in the end. But registering for both whole body donation and organ and tissue donation, you are going to help someone somehow, somewhere. And so I always tell people to make sure to register for both. And with organ and tissue donation now in North Carolina, Diane also mentioned we're first person authorization. Now in North Carolina, if you put a heart on your driver's license in North Carolina and you're over the age of 18, that is legal first person consent for organ, eye, and tissue donation. We also have an online registry donatelifenc.org, that you can register your decision to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor as well here in North Carolina. And that registry too is first person consent if you're 18 years or older. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't register on your driver's license under 18, because a lot of 16-year-olds are asked that question when they go to the DMV office. But what it does mean is that the parents, the next of kin, makes that final decision for you if you're under the age of 18. But what I encourage everyone, regardless of the age, make sure you have the discussion with your family. Let your family know your decision to become a donor, because it's so important. And I learned that with the family I mentioned earlier in my nursing career. I assumed the tears, the grief, the emotions that I saw from this mom and dad losing their 18-year-old daughter, that they had been through too much. And donation would be the last thing that they would want to do. But unbeknownst to me, that young lady, when she got her driver's license, that night at the dinner table, she talked about the road test, the written test. The one thing she made sure she mentioned is when they asked her the question about being a donor, she said yes. And she proudly showed the heart on her license. And she told her mom and dad, she said, if anything were to ever happen to me, I want to help someone. And they remembered that conversation. And they knew that they were carrying out her wishes and her decision. And for them, that helped in the grief process. It didn't make the pain go away, but they knew that she was being a hero. And so having that conversation, letting your family know your decisions, and it's a tough conversation. I've had the conversation with my family, and no one wants to talk about it. But I said, you know, these are my wishes. This is what I want. And so I said, if you carry them out, you've made me happy. And so I always encourage that. But those were great questions, and thank you for asking.
So Cameron, there's just a beautiful message in the chat about having a conversation with a spouse about what would we want in the obituary, and having that conversation and coming to a place where using that information to really frame a moment after her death, and then moving on to creating a scholarship. And everything in that message makes me also think about what Beth just said of hearing the voice, the wishes. And you started to talk about that as we started today. Can you talk more about how we begin that conversation, when we begin that conversation, and really thinking about all of the ways, writing letters and recording and asking questions? Just talk to us more about how we do this and how important it is.
Absolutely. And that is the hardest thing to do, is to have that conversation, because people don't really want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about anybody's death, yet alone our own. We don't want to think about it. And for a lot of us, it's the fear that if we talk about it, we may be bringing it about. But the reality is we are all going to die at some point. And we hope that it's under good circumstances. But we plan for the worst case scenario. And that's where the conversation has to start, is what do I want my death to look like? What do I want my afterlife on this earth to look like? And we really have to just sit down and talk to the ones we love to just express what that whole plan is. That includes funeral arrangements, it includes obituaries, includes anything that you believe would allow your legacy to live on. And so we have to become more comfortable talking about these things, because the longer we wait, the more detrimental it is. The 18-year-old that Beth spoke about, at 18, she was comfortable talking about her death and stating that if I die, I want to donate. And it happened sooner than later. For many of us, even as working as a family support coordinator at Honor Bridge, people believe that we want others to die so that we can get their organs. Reality is, I would love for every single person on this earth to recover, but that's just not going to happen. And so we have to be more comfortable talking about these things, talking about what happens when I die. What do I want to happen when I die? And if you want to donate to your whole body to medicine, do that. If you want your organs to be donated, do that. If you want to be cremated, talk about it. If you want a scholarship made in your name, be comfortable expressing these things with your loved ones so that then they can know what to do, and you can begin not only planning for this when you die, but planning for this before you die. And that's the best case scenario, is to have these plans in place long before your demise so that you can get the most optimal benefit of your legacy.
It strikes me that while we think about legacy, donating an organ, donating money, an endowment, donating your body is a gift, but the conversation with the family before that is also a gift. And we know that that is also the beginning of creating that legacy. And I am looking at, we are getting some wonderful questions. And Beth, I think this one asks specifically about who decides if an an individual's organs are healthy enough for donation. Maybe just tell us, I know that comes up a lot with our palliative and our hospice patients.
Yeah, and that is a question that in the community, oftentimes people, one of the big myths that people have is that I've gotten too old to be a donor. And as I get older, I'm seeing that age getting a lot closer to what I am right now. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the case. But oftentimes people wonder, I'm getting older and I've got some health problems. Should I register to be a donor? There's probably not anything anybody's going to want. So this probably doesn't pertain to me, but you would be amazed. The only absolute rule out for organ donation is active cancer. There's age is not even a rule out criteria for organ donation. The doctors, the transplant surgeons, they're the ones that determine suitability of the organs. And so they would not take an organ that was not working that well and place into a recipient. So I tell people all the time, don't worry about anything going on today or tomorrow. Just register and know that the doctors, they make the determination of the suitability of the organ before it's recovered and transplanted. But that often is what I hear in the community is one of the biggest hurdles that people have to get over is wondering, am I getting too old? Am I unhealthy? Would anybody want my organs? But there's always a need. And so I tell people, register and make sure your family knows your decision, and then let everything else, don't worry about anything else. Just let the doctors determine the suitability at the time of death.
Wonderful. And I would imagine letting, if you are involved in home health or palliative care, hospice, letting us know, letting those involved in your care in addition to your family is also very helpful. And Diane, I'll go ahead and ask the same question. So for somebody who has made the decision to be a full body donor, are there limitations when somebody's body might not ultimately be able to be accepted?
Yes, thank you, Risa. So our criteria at Elon is that if there are highly contagious infectious diseases, tuberculosis, hepatitis, at one point it was COVID positive, but that is no longer an issue for us because COVID, it just is not an issue with the preparation that is necessary for anatomical donation. It just distinguishes any, it rids the body of any possibility to pass infection on to our staff. If there's an automobile accident, and this is why I encourage, as Beth mentioned, for folks who are interested in organ donation as well as whole body donation to register for both. Because if there was a situation where someone died as a result of an automobile accident, we could not accept that body if a medical examiner is involved. And I would like to add that you can donate your body for anatomical gifting and also donate the corneas of the eyes. Those are two things that would be compatible without interfering with full body donation. But again, I encourage folks to make their wishes known earlier on, have that discussion with their family, because we are, again, a first person consent program. I mean, every situation is a case by case situation, and I take that into consideration. So for example, if the family calls me and lets me know that their loved one has died, yet they had put the request in to receive the donor registration packet and just didn't have the time to finish that. Now that's a case where I'm going to say, well, okay, this person did make the effort to register with our program, so I would take that into consideration, but no next of kin donation. So that's why, again, it is very important to make your wishes known earlier. And that is a consistency that I hear when I'm educating the general public, that folks in the audience will say, well, I don't know how to start that conversation with my family members. And it isn't easy. It's a matter of leaning into, those difficult moments. I've done so myself in my own personal life. My daughter's probably watching right now and knows that I speak the truth when I say that we have had that conversation 3 times and we're not finished, but we get a little bit closer each time. So I encourage everyone to, really have that conversation with your family members. Make your wishes known, as Cameron said, as Beth said, as Risa said.
Thank you. There's a question, which is really a comment, a resource, making mention, and I'm going to ultimately come to you, Cameron. Sarah mentioned that there's a project at Stanford University called the Letter Project, and it provides a template to think about leaving our legacy. And thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. And I know that there are many different tools out there. There are books, there's how to write an ethical will, there are some within faith traditions. And if you could, Cameron, talk to us some about those choices that people can make, and not only share what their wants are, but who they were at their core, the essence of the person, and how they share that and make sure, as you said, their story continues to be told.
There are a variety of documents and things that a person can use. The medical document would be the advance directive. Well, that is the legal medical document. And you can share in the advance directive not only concerning organ donation, you can also put in there who you want your legal decision maker to be, as well as your living will documents. And so that's the legal document. As far as the personal touch, you can use anything. You can write a letter to your loved ones, even pre-planning your funeral arrangements, which significantly reduce the cost of funerals, allow you to tell the story. As much as you can do in life to plan for this eventuality, that is the best case scenario. And so if that includes I don't know anything about the project at Stanford, but if it includes those templates, use them. If that is what is going to bring you and your family that comfort and peace. If writing love letters to your loved ones just in advance, use that. Any tool that you can find, whether it is writing letters, doing video recordings. I've heard of people even telling their story through a variety of gifts. Whatever you have that you want to tell this to your family so that they know your decisions, do it, but do it early. Let it be known where it is. Let it be known how they can access it. Because the more decisions you take off your family's plate, the better off they'll be when the time comes.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge we've had some people asking for contact information and a reporting and resources. Clearly, we are doing what we wanted, which was to get this information out there. And I want to let all participants know that you will be receiving an email tomorrow. It's going to have a link with the recording, and it's going to have links for contacts for Honor Bridge and Elon University. And so you all will be receiving that information. And I am so thrilled that you're eager to receive it, because it lets me know that this conversation is really having that impact that I know it is having on me. And I appreciate you, Karen, mentioning advanced directives. You know, certainly when we think about what care would I want, who would I want to speak on my behalf, is a wonderful gift that we should give to our families and give to ourselves, so that our wishes are respected, and do that as soon as possible and update it as necessary. Which makes me, Beth, think about I'm thinking about the family who knows that their family member wanted to be an organ donor. They talked about it, and talk to us a little bit about that moment where you're explaining to someone what organs can be utilized and tissue can be. Thinking some people could be disappointed, but yet this is a celebration. The ability to even consider that somebody wanted to donate their organs. And while a particular organ might not be able to be used, there are so many others that will be able to save another person.
Yeah, when you know the discussion is made, and I work with a group of volunteers at Honor Bridge, and they consist of recipients who have received organs, tissue. We also have a group of volunteers who are donor family members, and a group that they just want to get out and raise awareness about donation. And I have a letter from a recipient who actually got to meet her donor's family. And it is amazing to hear this lady who needed a lung transplant wrote to her donor family and said, I never saw this coming. Within a span of 2 months, I had to move to Durham to be put on the lung transplant waiting list, and I was given 6 months to live. Before that, I was healthy, 2 adult children, never saw this coming. But she was able to meet the donor family, and the donor family expressed that they didn't know when they said yes to donation what it actually was saying and meaning. And when they found out a little bit about each of the recipients, whether they were recipients of organs, the tissue, as Diane had mentioned earlier, the corneas, just how amazed they were that not everything that they consented to was able to be donated for transplant, but the things that were donated and the things that were able to be used for transplant. And for Julie to receive a double lung transplant meant she got to continue life. She got to continue to see her family and to just enjoy getting back to living. They also were able to meet the recipients of the corneas, and they shared the story of knowing that their loved one was able to give that gift of sight. And I think it stops everyone in their tracks when they think of waking up in the morning and seeing the sun rise, to see all the beauty that we have around us, and to know that if that's the only thing that you can donate, and I've always told my family, if I'm not able to be an organ donor and I can't donate all of the solid organs, or if I can't donate all of the tissue, if I can donate my corneas and give sight to someone who cannot see, someone who's not been able to look at the beauty that we see now with spring coming upon us, their own family members. If I can just give that back to someone, then I feel like my time here on earth was well spent. And so I always tell people, I always tell families, I always tell volunteers, to me, the true hero starts the minute you register. And then the ending, kind of as Cameron's talked about and Diane's talked about, just know that you've taken that step, and the rest, the legacy that you're going to leave behind, you never know what impact it's going to mean. You never know who's going to receive these gifts. You never know what they're going to be able to do after the receiving. So the whole thing with legacy, with organ and tissue donation, with whole body donation, to me, it's just an amazing opportunity that each one of us has been given that gift. And then we can pass that gift on by registering and letting our families know, hey, if I can make a difference to just one person, that's one person that difference may not have been made. So, I tell people when they're again in the communities, when they start worrying about, well, I don't know, I've had high blood pressure, I've had diabetes, I won't be able to donate this or that. Don't worry about it. If you can donate one thing to help one person, you've done way more than you could ever imagine.
Thank you. And opening your heart to consider it, for your family to know that that was your wish and your intention, and that was what you had in your heart. That also, I think, goes a long way. Cameron, I'm thinking about you as a chaplain, and I'm not thinking about any religion in particular, but I am thinking about religion, spirituality, and whether for some people that might be a question when we think about organ donation or full body donation. And how do we seek reassurance from our faith communities and get some guidance? I would imagine in your work that's something that you definitely have faced and addressed.
Absolutely. And currently, we don't know of any religion that actually prohibits organ donation. Not only do no religions prohibit it, most religions encourage it as a means of healing and as a means of giving. Most religions encourage their adherents to give generously, to be a part of this community. And through organ and gift donation, through whole body donation, you are being a part of the community. You are being a part of this ever living group, even after death. And so in religion and spirituality, that is simply saying that I am no longer here on earth to impact it in my life, but I'm going to impact life even after death. And that is it's a beautiful thing spiritually to be able to do that, to know that I can't worry about this going forward, so I am going to help others. I've never seen a problem with it spiritually. The biggest problem I've seen has come from a cultural understanding of what people would like to see done with their body. And that's something that we also need to address is what are the cultural prohibitions in giving these gifts? What are the cultural things and legacy that we want to see? And how do these cultural influences impact our decision-making?
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate you adding culture to that conversation. Somebody noted in the chat that their parent had received a organ donation when she was 12 years old and then lived an additional 32 years. And what a beautiful legacy, both for that donor left, and then for Debbie to be able to have her mother for all of these additional years. So thank you for sharing that. I am being very mindful of our time, and I want to begin to think about as we wrap up. And I'm going to come to you, Beth, first. I wonder, the takeaway. How do I start this conversation? What is there a resource? Is there we look at a particular time of the year, a particular birthday, a holiday, some practical ideas and thoughts that you might share with others, that not just for organ donation, but we could all apply to the broader legacy conversation?
Well, I wouldn't suggest approaching it the way I did. I picked Thanksgiving dinner, and I did the announcement. And, at first it was one of those topics that my grandmother was like, no, we're shutting that down. But she later learned to accept, because I had a cousin that needed a kidney and a pancreas. And she realized the only way to receive is for someone to give. And so that kind of brought that home and made it better. But I've often heard people say that some of the best times that they've been able to talk to their family about this decision that they've made is right after they get their driver's license, when it's still fresh on their mind. And, the only thing some people have said to me they're proud of is that heart on their license, because the picture was the worst thing ever. So they're very proud to show the heart. And something like that, I have a lot of people who say, just as soon as I came out of the DMV, I made sure my family knew. Others, I've heard it takes a tragedy to get families to start talking. And, as Cameron and Diane will both agree, if we can have these conversations, outside of the tragic part of it, because it really is, to me, one of the greatest conversations we're having, because, this is something that Cameron mentioned earlier, we're not going to get out of, but it's how can I make sure that everything that I want after death is complete, makes me relax, and hopefully for my family, it helps for them as well. This grief is still there, but it makes that process a little bit easier. And so I tell people all the time, April is National Donate Life Month, and a lot of times people take April to talk about organ and tissue donation and then just have a discussion. But there's never a wrong time, is what I say. Is just make sure you have that discussion and make sure your family does know.
Thank you. Yeah. April also has National Healthcare Decisions Day. And we know that there are things like StoryCorps Project, that NPR, often we listen to a story and we can say, oh, I heard that, or there's the conversation. I mean, there are many tools out there, but yet, Diane, for your kind of takeaway for us, you mentioned that you've been having these conversations with your daughter, and I'm sure that's very different than the conversations you have in the public with the community. But what's the takeaway when you combine your personal and your professional that you want us to leave this space with for today?
I would say that consistently, as statewide educator, I hear from folks who are interested in whole body donation. And again, I'll say that whole body donation is not for everyone, but if this is your choice, I encourage you to start the conversation with your family, to tell your story to your family, that if there's something of interest to you about anatomical donation, if this is the way that you would like to leave your legacy through the lives of our future healthcare providers, then to explain that to them. I personally chose to be an anatomical donor. And so my daughter and I had that conversation, and I chose my daughter's and my grandson's birthday month to have that conversation, to start that conversation. So as Beth shared, Thanksgiving, that was a time for her to initiate conversation. So I think whatever works best for you, there's no definite time of the year. It's just, and it doesn't matter how many times you have the conversation, it's just that you have the conversation. And I will share with you that one of our anatomical donors shared with me, she said, and it's quite comical, she said, I was a great recycler all my life. So I would like to continue in that way after my death. And so, if anatomical donation is the decision that is right for you and your family supports this, we hope that you'll consider creating your legacy through Elon's anatomical gift program. I'm available to speak one-on-one to folks. Some folks do not like to be in public and have these conversations, so one-on-one is an option, and check out our website. I would also encourage folks to listen to and watch the student testimonial video that's on our website. The students really tell the story that they are appreciating the gift of their silent teacher and always respecting that gift, always holding that gift in high esteem, with compassion and with dignity. And they consider that to be the ultimate gift toward their healthcare education.
So Cameron, as we think about, again, that broad topic of legacy, whether it is beginning to talk about our advanced care directives, who I want to be my voice, what has given my life meaning, where the recipes are, what do you think about in terms of a takeaway for us from this space in terms of what we might do now? As we, see the sunset tonight and rise tomorrow, what might we consider doing now, today?
Absolutely. And I would say it's starting that conversation. Use what we have available. If that means watching the Disney movie Coco with your family and then talking about it, or sitting down and watching Hamilton and then having a discussion about legacy. Talk about it with your family. It's great for us to talk about it in the panel, but if it's not talked about amongst families, then it won't change anything. I encourage religious leaders to speak about it to your congregants. Talk about how, yes, we believe in miracles, but it's even better if you can be a miracle for somebody else. Talk about these life-changing things that we have available to us so that people, when the difficult time comes, they can actually make informed decisions. And the hardest thing for us to talk about is when children die. It still happens. It happens more often than we care to even think about. But parents having to make decisions about anatomical gifting when they're dealing with the death of a child, it's just, the emotions involved are unimaginable. And so these conversations need to happen long before they're in a hospital room talking to a physician or talking to a family support coordinator. And so what we can start doing now is having these healthy conversations. If you need to watch The Shack, whatever it takes, whatever movies or books or cultural things we have available to us, use it. If you need to write letters, start having the conversation. Start as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I want to make sure to get this one question in, and Beth and Diane, maybe just, the question is, how long must bodies be kept alive for organ and or full body donation? And our time is short, but I'm sure there's a longer answer. But Beth, in general, what guidance can you give us?
Well, after death is pronounced with organ donation, the process can be anywhere, and it's on a case-by-case basis, as someone had mentioned earlier. It can be anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And that's the entire process of matching the organs to the recipients who are receiving those, and for the recovery to take place. After death has been pronounced, you have 24 hours to recover the tissue, bone grafts, skin grafts, heart valves. So that's the time frame once death has been pronounced, that the clock starts for us.
And Diane, I would imagine it's notifying you once a death has occurred.
Yes, conversations with healthcare providers is crucial, and timing is that we would like to be one of the first people called once death is pronounced. And every situation is different. Some folks would like to have us come in and do the removal immediately if there's a death at home. Other families prefer to ask and have asked us to wait, the longest length of time, which would be 24 hours, because they want to have family members come in from, out of state or whatever the case may be to say their final goodbyes. So, but within 24 hours. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you to the three of you. You have been amazing. A lot of information. I think this is a stepping off point for many of us. And so as a reminder, you will be receiving an email that will have the recording from today's conversation, along with links to the different resources, and we can continue this conversation. And our webinar series continues as well. I want to highlight the program that we're going to be having in May 19th. And we're going to be talking about Power of Knowing, transitions and life changes. As we age, we know that we have to make certain changes. And I think that will be a lovely conversation coming after our conversation today about legacy, because they do go hand in hand. So look forward to information about that. I want to end with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it says, "To leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded." So thank you all, our panelists and our participants. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and I hope that you have a good and safe rest of today. Thank you.